Hello everybody. In this video I'd like to have a little talk about a somewhat uncommon and maybe not very well known game book called Vengeance. Now I'd like to feature it on the channel at some point, but first there's some things worthy of some consideration. There are two different versions of this game book. There is the first edition and the second edition. The first edition is set in the Cursed Empire role-playing setting, the world of Phagos, and the second edition has been transformed into a generic setting with all of the Cursed Empire stuff removed. Now there's strengths and benefits of both versions in that regard, obviously. So, first thing, setting. The first version has a more specific setting, and it has story and plot elements that tie into that setting. Character sheet will be around, 2020. Hang on. Now, there are advantages to that setting and disadvantages. So let's just get to the next thing. Right, so first off, we'll put that one on double page. Oh, that's no good, is it? The character sheet is on like that. Alright. The character sheet's on 2 pages here. So, the advantages are that... Now, there's not going to be a lot to see in this video necessarily. I'm just going to talk through things. The Cursed Empire role-playing game has a good setting, and the stories set within it are quite good, but the rules are not so good, and sometimes it has balance issues. It's not a new setting. I'm not advertising some new product or anything. I'm just speaking about something that I've enjoyed quite a lot in the past. The second difference between the two... So, no. Bugger. It's going to be a great video, isn't it? So, continuing on with the first difference before I get to the second one. The adventure in the first version of the book ties in with the setting and is a good introduction to the setting. It introduces you to the world, gives you a good feel for what it's like, and helps you sort of assimilate what it would be like to roleplay in that world. It's a good introduction to the setting. Now, I don't know why there are two different versions. I don't know why the author decided to divorce the book from the role-playing game. Or why this separation has occurred and why this is now a generic setting. I don't know if he was planning on creating his own, or if it was to do with the fact that the Cursed Empire role-playing game was sort of disappearing and fading away, unfortunately, at the time. It's not really in print or easy to get hold of at the moment. The second thing you will have noticed, if you look... So, advantage of the first one for story, you get a good, crunchy, meaty, oomphy, emotionally effective feeling of introduction to the world, right? The second one, you get a nice generic setting. You don't need to know too much about anything that's going on in the world. But then all of the things that introduce that stuff to you have been removed or toned down to the point of being very bland. Without going into too many specifics, there is a particular group of villains from the role-playing setting who appear in the adventure. In the initial version, you get this... you get this introduction to them as being, these are the bad guys from such and such a place, and these are their motivations and stuff. In the second version, it's more generic. It's just like, oh, they're just generic bad guys. Yeah, they have a name as an organization, a group, but it's not quite the same. That you don't get this feeling of it being so important or integral to the world. So the first one, you're like, oh, this is a major setting element. In the second one, you're like, oh, it's just part of the world. So, second difference, the first version uses a modified version of the Cursed Empire role-playing game, a heavily simplified version of the Cursed Empire role-playing game, which uses percentile dice. The second version uses its own rule system, which uses six-sided dice and a different skill system, and generally it's been rebalanced. The first edition, which uses the Cursed Empire core mechanics, I'd say, in a fairly simplified manner. Look, we got 5 ability scores here. The core game has 10 ability scores, for example. And we have 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 13 skills. The core game has 156, of which you're never likely to use more than 100 on a single character. There are some skill duplication and redundancy issues, to put it politely. It's essentially modified RuneQuest with house rules and the Ars Magica in-game real-time spell creation system, and for some reason AD&D first edition level-based health and Vancian magic spell slots, even though the flavor text of the game describes the magic as having nothing to do with spell slots and being more of an exhaustion and fatigue system. Yeah. And the combat rules are a bit clunky, let's put it that way. That's referring to the core game. The combat rules here work, but the encounters are quite challenging. In the second edition, with the simplified setting, the system has been rebalanced with a 2d6 bell curve instead of a percentile, sort of straight line. And it is generally easier, but not easy. Alright? So first difference, setting, second difference, mechanics and difficulty. There is a third thing to bear in consideration, and this affects both versions of the game book. It's relatively the same. It is a very challenging adventure, very hard to finish successfully. There's a disclaimer on that, by the way, on that statement, and I'll get to that in a moment. That's because the villains in the Cursed Empire setting from the first book, who you go up against, are supposed to be really hard to defeat, and you do have to play very well to defeat them, or be incredibly lucky. Whereas in the second book, the same villains don't have that sort of heritage behind them. They don't have that established nature of being really, really dangerous. So they're a bit easier to deal with. And, they don't have that reputation to maintain and uphold and so on. There is one other issue. where I said it was hard, it's hard, alright? Now, the writing is good. It's evocative. It hits you right in the feels. But I would say maybe there should be an age rating on this game book, like a 12 or a 15. Maybe not a 12, maybe more of a 15. I know I'm aware America doesn't have a 12 or a 15 age rating. They have a 13, bizarrely, and then they go straight all the way up to 18. We have a 12, a 15, and an 18 over here in England. And I would say this is not extreme enough to be an 18, but it's at times shocking and unpleasant enough to be a 15. There is evidence of the bad things the villains do, and this helps solidify their reputation. It reinforces them. It is in nature with who they are and what they are. It is completely within the scope of the story. There are times when it almost feels a little excessive, and it would feel excessive if some of the villains responsible were not members of this particular group who are supposed to be that nasty. So the bad guys in this adventure are really bad guys. They do nasty, horrible things. The style of the writing, especially in the first half of the adventure and the introduction, really reminds me of David Gemmell's books, actually. And that should give you a good idea of the kind of nastiness you can expect from the villains, although not quite as extreme as some of the things he's written. This carries on into the second version of the book, right? It's the same level of nastiness from the bad guys. And this does help justify how hard they are to defeat. In all fairness, you're like, oh, these are totally unscrupulous evil monsters who will do horrible things. But there is one other issue. So at the beginning of the adventure, you start going to visit your foster father in the forest, who's been looking after you since you became an orphan and teaching you the ways of the ranger, the ways of the forest. And you find that he has been brutally murdered and robbed by a bunch of nasty bandits who have stolen something from the house and gone off, something you didn't even know was there, something that was hidden. And you decide to go and get revenge on them, and you start tracking them down through the forest to their lair. And when you get to their lair, if you get that far, it is revealed to be a dungeon underneath an old abandoned fortress in the forest. The forest exploration at the beginning bit is good. The dungeon exploration underneath the castle is good. However, the dungeon exploration portion is really, really tough. And the path that leads to the greatest chance of success involves skipping most of the dungeon content because there is a secret door in the first room of the dungeon. If you find that secret door and go into the secret passage, you will go, essentially, if we consider this here to be the dungeon, the secret door's here and the passage goes all the way up the side and pops in at the end, cutting out all the flavourful, setting-relevant content of the dungeon. So you're skipping a lot of the introductory stuff and finding items that will benefit you at the end and help you to overcome the final villain. So if I do a playthrough on the channel, I need to decide, do I want to take the secret passage if I can find it? And if I can't, hey, I could just let the dice decide, right? But essentially, it might be worth doing 2 playthroughs, not finding the secret door, and going through the portion of the dungeon that is significantly harder, because it's much more flavourful, it's a better introduction to the setting, which of course is less relevant with the second edition, where the setting basically isn't there, and there's a generic sort of placeholder setting plopped in with a few generic names. It might be tempting to play the first edition text with the second edition gameplay mechanics and pop back and forth between the 2 PDFs for reasons of game balance and an interesting playthrough, because playing the first edition with the initial rules is pretty brutal. I haven't fully decided how I want to approach this yet, so I reckon I should ask you guys to drop any comments down below. Let me know what you think of this one. Well, these 2 versions of the one game book, to be honest. It could be fun. It could be interesting. I think some of you might enjoy it, especially as it's no longer on sale. But also as it's pretty tough. I don't know. Do you want to see a successful adventure or a much more entertaining adventure? Which might also have a slight chance of success, but it'll be a lot harder for me, I can tell you that. Okay. Well, that's enough rambling for now. This won't be the only video today. Let me know what you think, guys. Hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye for now. Quick note at the end here. Actually, I do have a pretty good idea why the second edition has been divorced from the Cursed Empire setting. And that is George Lucas and his lawyers. See, originally, the guys who wrote the Cursed Empire role-playing game published it, they sold it, it went really well, and they took it over to America, to an American convention, and between the airport and the place where the convention was being held, they were intercepted by George Lucas's lawyers, who said, "You can't sell this game you've called Crimson Empire, because in Star Wars the Emperor's bodyguard are called the Crimson Empire Guards. So we're taking you to court to stop you doing this." And they went to court, and it was an expensive court case, and eventually the agreement was that they could sell the physically printed copies they had, but they weren't allowed to print any more. So they went away and rewrote Crimson Empire as Cursed Empire and called it Cursed Empire, which is a second edition. And the second edition of this game book, which has been divorced from the Cursed Empire setting, is called Vengeance US Distribution, implying that this one was for it. So I don't know if there was some complaint about the first one still having any mention of the Cursed Empire setting, but I'd hazard a guess that may be the reason why it was divorced from the setting and published separately as a separate book. There we go, just putting that in there. I'll probably mention it again if I do a playthrough on the channel. But anyway, hey, hope you appreciate the information.